Stop what you're doing. If you're going to invest in Metro Detroit real estate using a 2021 playbook, you're probably going to lose money. It's 2026, we've hit the housing reset, and the rules in Detroit have officially changed. Let's get into it. Inventory is up, houses are sitting on the market longer, and that easy flip, it just got a lot more expensive. But while some flippers are sitting there sweating their holding costs, smart investors are locking in 12% yields right now in neighborhoods that other investors just don't even know about. So is it smarter to choose that one-time payday or build a cash flow empire? Today, we're going to talk about both options in the Detroit market. We're going to expose the traps of a mid-tier flip and talk about places where the 1% rule is still in effect. Hey guys, how you doing? Werenka here from Simply Home. I'm the broker for the state of Michigan. I've got an all-star team. So whether you're looking to buy, sell, invest, rent, whatever you need, we've got you covered. We even do property management now. So over the course of the past couple of years, it's been a slow transition, but I think in 2026, we're officially here. We've gone from just an extreme seller's market like most of the rest of the country had, and we've transitioned into more of a stabilized, balanced market that's better for buyers and sellers. Although we are seeing higher inventory levels now, longer days on market, just kind of a more of a slower pace of the business in general. And those year-over-year appreciation gains that we saw earlier in the decade, 10, 12% year-over-year, thankfully have slowed down. That was always going to be unsustainable. We've settled into a more, 2 to 5%, depending on the area, annual appreciation, which is definitely sustainable. So I'm very happy to see that. So as I discussed at the beginning, the market is still there, whether you're looking to flip or buy and hold, although it's definitely shifting a bit. So let's talk about both of those. And most of the rest of the country, the 1% rule where you try and rent your home for 1% of the purchase price per month, that's disappeared in a lot of the country. It's definitely still alive and well here in Metro Detroit, especially in the city of Detroit. You can definitely exceed that rule. But from a strictly just buy and hold rental cash flow months per month standpoint, the B class neighborhoods are typically the ones that I promote anyway. Those are the neighborhoods where you can, if you buy a $160,000 rental property, you can reasonably expect to get anywhere from $1,500 to $1,700 a month in rent. And the rental market is still going pretty strong, especially in that general monthly rent price range. And that's because even with, interest rates lowering and all kinds of down payment assistance programs out there, like homeownership is still just generally going to be out of reach for a portion of the population in our area. And at the same time, most people who, predict these things are still forecasting a, 3 to 5% year over year appreciation on most of the metro area. So those are the pluses to employing a buy and hold strategy right now in our market. Let's talk about some of the minuses, because there's always going to be trade-offs no matter what you do. Now, property taxes are always going to be a big one, because the way that it works in Michigan, you got the state equalized value, which is what the taxes are based off of. And that's always supposed to be about 50% of the actual true value of the home. And then what gets people in trouble, we've also got a taxable value, which when somebody takes ownership of that home, the taxable value uncaps and meets the state equalized value. So the state equalized value goes up and down depending on the market. So that really doesn't really have any impact on how much you pay per se, because where your actual property taxes are calculated is from the taxable value, which is limited in the amount that it can go up. In the state of Michigan, taxable value can only increase by the rate of inflation or 5%, whichever is less. And I know we're kind of in an inflationary market now, but for the past 15 years before that, we had next to no inflation. It would be like 0.6% per year, things like that. So what you'd have was the value of that property keeps going up and up and up, especially in the market that we've just been in for the last 5 years. But the taxable value can only go up by a certain amount. So the longer somebody lives in that home, the bigger potential jump there is when that property gets sold, because then the taxable value will uncap and meet the state equalized value. So that's where people get that sticker shock when they first purchase a home. If it's been lived in for 20 or 30 years, that seller was paying a way lower tax rate than they should have been, more than likely. They should have been paying that right amount, but it was less than they could have been paying. And and that purchaser, when they buy that house and those taxes uncapped, then they get to pay those high taxes. Just keep that in mind. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're purchasing that rental property, is how long it's been owned previously to you purchasing it. And then on top of that, if it wasn't already a rental property, if it was somebody's primary residence, they got a homestead tax exemption, meaning that their taxes are about 30 or 35% less. And then if you're going to use it as a investment property, you don't get that homestead exemption, so your taxes will go up. So another minus to doing the buy and hold strategy right now is just the fact that we're an older city. A lot of these homes that we're talking about here in the B class neighborhoods, or the city of Detroit, we kind of target homes that were built in like the 40s, 50s, and 60s, which, they're not ancient and they're extremely well built buildings, but the older the home is, the more maintenance and update and upkeep it requires. So, especially if it's a brick home, you don't have to worry so much about the exterior, but the roof, the gutters, make sure there's no dry rot, just things like that. Furnaces have to be replaced periodically, hot water heaters, plumbing, you name it, electrical. So the older the house, I mean, we've had homes that had knob and tube wiring from the 1920s. And that's, dangerous as all get out. So we definitely try and avoid those type of properties, but it's something to consider. I'm not saying go and buy a rental property and go and do a full rehab on it, but have it inspected, know what you're getting into before you get into it. And then you got to consider, rehab costs as well. I like to target homes that are just move-in ready. You maybe have to go in and get a mate clean done on them and move somebody in, or buy some appliances. But, there's also something to be said for buying a home that dirt cheap that needs a little bit of work. If that's going to be the case, you need to make sure that labor is not going to kill your budget, because if you're hiring work out, the home improvement market's cooled a little bit, but not that much to where you can get somebody out the street to come and do a job at a high skill level for next to nothing. I mean, those people still command pretty high rates. So there's definitely something to think about. The more work you can do yourself, the better off you're going to be. And that's probably going to be a recurring theme. So that's buy and hold. That's a, relatively conservative investing strategy, but it's one that pays off like crazy in this market. So let's talk about fix and flip, because I know I maybe made it sound like it's impossible. You're not going to make any money on that. That's not quite the case, but it's no longer just a slam dunk, just picking out a house and being able to flip it. There's definitely some finesse that's going to go into that type of strategy. So let's talk about that for a minute. As I just said, it's no longer enough just to buy a house, sit on it for 6 months, and then sell it at a profit, which, depending on the year previously, we could do. But, it's a little trickier now. Like we said, there's more inventory on the market. Homes are sitting on the market longer. Every day that your flip sits on the market before being sold is money that's costing you in taxes and upkeep and general maintenance. And, God forbid somebody breaks into it, or it burns down, or something happens to it. There's a lot of inherent risk build up to just holding a vacant property. So let's talk about what you need to do to make it not vacant as quickly as possible. So one of the weirdest trends that I've seen, something that I wasn't really expecting, that's kind of developed over the last couple months, is just it's a low percentage of the active available inventory that's selling every month. There might be, I think St. Clair Shores, for example, in February this month, I think there was 140 homes on the market, and only 42 sold in the month of January in St. Clair Shores, which is a very small percentage, less than what you'd expect in a normal month. But what we're seeing is that the homes that are selling for almost at full price, and in some instances over full price. So that means, not that many homes are selling, but the ones that sell, there's bidding wars on some of them, which is, you wouldn't expect when there's that much other inventory out there. So like I said, that's kind of unusual. I wasn't expecting that, but that's what we're seeing right now. So what do you need to do to make sure that your home is one of the small percentage that sell? Well, it's going to come down to it's basic common sense. Obviously, the home has to be appealing, and it has to be priced right now. For the first time in a very long time, buyers know that the ball isn't strictly in the seller's court anymore. We're seeing lower initial offers come in. We're seeing more contingencies. We're seeing, buyers ask for closing costs that they just couldn't before. Longer inspection periods, things like that, because realistically, they can ask for that now where they couldn't maybe 2 or 3 or even 4 years ago, or maybe even last year in some certain circumstances. So at the end of the day, if you're going to employ a fix and flip strategy, the number 1, 2, 3, 4 most important things are, I know I'm supposed to say location, 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 acquisition price, acquisition price, acquisition price. It doesn't matter what location you're in. You can flip any house as long as you pick it up cheap enough and you can rehab it cheap enough to where you can still give somebody a good deal on it when they buy it. You're going to make money. And, acquisition cost, again, is huge. And it's easier to do because there is more inventory out there. Because, at the beginning of this, before you sell the house, you're the buyer. So you're going to get to experience both sides of the coin there. But yeah, it's not good enough to just get a pretty good deal anymore, especially if you're going to hire out some of that work. Again, because contractors, handymen, you name it, are not cheap, especially the higher skill they have, the more expensive it's going to be. But the more competent you are to do as much of that work on your own, the better off you're going to be, just because it keeps the cost down. Costs are all over the place as well right now too, but it's more like labor seems to be like the big one. And that's if you pay cash for it. If you're buying this house on a mortgage with the intent of flipping it at at an investment loan, right now the average interest rates, in the low sixes, but if you're buying it as an investment, you might be in the sevens. And if you're going to sit on a house, you're going to pay for it, spend 3 months rehabbing it, and then 3 months, by the time you put it on the market, get it under contract, and then close it post inspection and everything. Well, that's, 6 months at 7% interest. That's going to eat into a lot of your equity. So I guess the moral of the story is be very, very, very careful right now. If you're gonna move into fix and flip, know what you're doing. This probably isn't the strategy if it's your first time, because the next flip I see that came in ahead of schedule and under budget will be the first one. There's always going to be some kind of cost overrun. It's always going to take a little bit longer than you thought. You're going to, get the house kind of torn apart and find things that you didn't know were there that you have to fix, things like that. You might pull a permit, have a bad inspector, a much more thorough inspector than you would expect. And they're going to, it's just going to add to your rehab costs. So make sure you make sure you know what you're doing before you do it, or call me first and I'm going to talk you out of it, tell you to buy a rental property. Right. But lately there's a third option that's emerged, and it's pretty intriguing, at least on paper. It's not something that I've actually done yet, so I can't sit here and endorse it or, tell you this is going to work, because I think it will, but I'm not positive. And that's called wholetailing. And it's kind of like a hybrid between buy and hold and fix and flip. So let's just, give an example here of, we're gonna target one of the inner ring suburbs. Will be a Hazel Park or an Oak Park or, Roseville, like kind of the areas that we target anyway. You're gonna come in and buy a distressed property, something that, grandma's house, or maybe it's a foreclosure or a short sale or whatever the case may be, something that needs a little bit of work. You're not going to give it a full rehab. You're going to go in and do just the essential repairs. Like, if the furnace is, 50 years old and leaking carbon monoxide, replace the furnace, maybe come in, paint, put in new flooring, spruce it up, and just put lipstick on the pig, if you will. And then instead of selling that house right away, you're going to rent it for 12 months. And this does a couple things. It lets you accumulate income while the market is sorting itself out and becoming more predictable. Because right now, that's like kind of the biggest question mark, is the unpredictability of the market in general. And while we are still, predicting 3 to 5%, year-over-year appreciation, hopefully that materializes. Then what you do after that year, you've collected, a year's worth of rent. Then you turn around and you sell that house to another investor or potentially just a buyer, and you get to capitalize on that rental income and capitalize on that appreciation while you haven't had to dump a bunch of money into that house and let it sit for 3 to 6 months while you're doing a full rehab. Buy and hold, and keep it for 20 years either. So something to think about. Again, nothing that I've done yet, but if anybody wants to give it a try, give me a call. As always, my direct line is 586-491-5622. Call or text anytime. And as always, guys, I truly appreciate you watching these videos, supporting the channel. If you're new to the channel, maybe throw a like and subscribe, throw a comment in the comment section. I love getting feedback on these. Any questions you have whatsoever about any aspect of the Detroit residential real estate market, I'm your guy. And we'll talk soon, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great one.